Hello and welcome to my monthly wrap up. So this is all of the books that I read in May. May was definitely a better month than April. So I think I read a total of 39 books. So that's fantastic. I didn't want to read less, but I took the time that I spent reading and I just put it into crocheting. So I took time from one hobby and just put it in another hobby. So instead of having a brain overload, my wrists are sore. But I'll have to tweak that because I did want to free up that time and do some more things in my life that would improve my life, not so much just hobby time only. However, let's talk about the books that I read. So I'm going to start off with the longest book I read, and that was Outlive, The Science of Art and Longevity by Peter Attia. I think this clocked in at 496 pages. Did not need to be that long. Why so long? Why so long? The shortest book I read was Good Night, A Holistic Guide to Sleep, and it was at 126 pages. And this was fantastic. This was a really good read. It was, very short, but I'll talk about it more when I get to it. But that was the longest and the shortest books I read. The best book I read, and the only 5-star of the month, was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Now, I didn't know this was the second in a series, my bad. I still enjoyed it. I still think you can read it if you didn't read the first one, but it does spoil the first one a little bit. But this was so good. This was so good. Obviously, new book boyfriend, perfect man that doesn't exist, but perfect man who also has social anxiety. So it's nice to see that portrayed as well. It's very relatable. Abby Jimenez is honestly now my favorite contemporary romance author. I just find a lot of her humor very similar. She puts references and that in her books that I get, that I understand. Her characters do have flaws. I think I'm finding the women a bit more seem to be self-sabotaging on new healthy relationships because of past traumatic relationships. That seems to be the thing. But otherwise, I still enjoy them. They still make me feel happy and they're very easy to read. And this was fantastic. 5-star book. Now I'm going to talk about the books that I didn't rate for whatever reason. So the one we have Outlive once again. So this book was about longevity. I've read better written books about longevity, so I decided not to read it. If I was going to read it, I'd probably give it a 3, but like I said, I think it's just because I have read so many books on this topic that I feel like it's unfair to judge and be like, well, I've already learned all this stuff before, there's nothing new here really, so that's why I didn't rate that one. Then we have What Works for Autistic Children. A lot of these books tend to be nonfiction books, so sometimes with a nonfiction book, I can't rate it because I just don't really have a strong feeling about it either way, so really probably these might all be 3-star reads. I'm going to be honest, these probably would be 3 stars, but I didn't want to give them 3 stars. So we've got that, we've got Chasing the Sun. We have Kindred by Octavia Butler. That book I didn't like the way it was written. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the pacing, the lack of explanation. I don't know, it just didn't fit right with me, but I just didn't want to rate it and drag down her score, to be honest. I think that's the biggest reason. Burning Woman, which was another non-fiction book, very feminist slant. The Australian Autism Handbook, a very how-to guide on getting your children diagnosed and what to do. And the Boudoir Bible, which is a book about sex. But once again, it's a topic. I've read a lot of books about sex. I like sex as a topic to read about. Yeah, I think these books probably would be around 3 stars, but I just chose not to rate. Now we're going to the DNFs. So we've got In the Shadow Garden, which was a magical sort of realism book, but it seemed to involve a second chance romance trope and a dating my ex-fiance's brother trope, and I just don't like those things. And it was just like I said, these books mostly I DNF'd them because I knew they probably were not going to hit over 3 stars, and I'm getting really harsh now with just dropping those books because I don't really want my average rating to be 3. I'm trying to raise it up. The Cartographers by Amy Zhang. This was like a sort of time loop, time distortion YA novel. Wasn't interested. Compulsion by Kate Scott. The writing in this was a mind trip. It was just so heavy and dense and overly flowery to the point where it's nonsensical. It's like, that doesn't make sense, bro. And every single sentence was like that. And there was a lot of drug taking, and I'm just not into that whole pill popping scene. So I didn't have to. Shady Hollow. Turns out books about animals walking around. It's very it's very cozy. I'll give it that. It had a very Wind of the Willows kind of vibe to it, but I was bored and I could just tell, like, I'm not going to care about this dragonfly and this fox. Like, I'm just not going to care. So it was a bit too, quirky, sweet, slow for me. The Sunbearer Trials, a Mexican themed Hunger Games-y kind of demigod Percy Jackson book. too YA for me. That's why I DNF'd that one. Had a lot of queer and non-binary trans rep in it though. Twin Crowns, fantasy book about twins. No, I just remember reading it and thinking this is juvenile and it's not really well written and I just don't care. I'm too old for this. So that's why I DNF'd that. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This might be the most controversial DNF choice on this. This is doing the rounds. Most people love this book. I am in the minority here. Hello, darling. The logic didn't make sense. So many things were happening that weren't logical. It's like, what? That doesn't make sense. Why would you do things this way? Why would you act this way if this was going on? It was just really dumb in that respect. And I couldn't keep looking past all the things that were happening that were just illogical. The main protagonist, I didn't like her. She was just really arrogant and obnoxious. And the point that the book really like soured for me was when she got her dragon and she was so rude. She was so disrespectful to this ancient beast that's chosen her and saved her life. And she was just, oh, I couldn't with the disrespect. I mean, I felt like, child, respect your elders. And also the love to hate, the enemies to lovers. It's not enemies to lovers. I'm finding this is happening a lot lately where they'll say like, this person is an enemy. And that person in particular, that dude, tends to always be the dude, is doing nothing but saving their life over and over again. And they're being rude to them. Like, you're my enemy, you son of a bee, and I don't trust you. And it's like, woman, I just saved your life. Like, chill, your mother killed my parents. Like, I know, I should hate you and want to destroy you, but I'm not actually doing that. So could you chill with the vitriol that you're spewing my way? So the writing wasn't amazing. The world building wasn't that great. Like, the pacing was so slow. It's a very, 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 very long book. So I am really, like I said, in the minority here that I didn't like it and I chose to DNF it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have given this a very high rating. I heard about the twists, the plot twists and that at the end. Wouldn't have saved the book. Then we have Different Not Less, which is a book about autism, but it was really reading more like a memoir, and the lady's got a thing for Disney, let me tell you. Cruel Illusions, touted as a Buffy meets Caraval. I get it, but it was so on the nose with a Buffy literally naming characters as Xander and Willow, and just badly written. The main protagonist is a biatch, so horrible to her very, very, very kind foster parent who's trying her bloody hardest. And I don't like it when kids are like that. You know, it's like, oh, I don't trust you, you're just going to leave us. But she's not leaving you and she's trying. So, like, are you self-sabotaging? Is that what you're doing? I can't read about characters like that. And it got a bit silly and I was out. Sorry about that. Sylvie, please. And then we have another controversial one, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Got amazingly high ratings with huge amount of reviews. But this was just, what? The dialogue was so cheesy and it felt like it was just a transcript of a movie. That's the way it felt written. And the guy, it was just, once again, illogical things happening. Like, only this one person is going to experiment with this thing, even though we've got millions of scientists who are not high school teachers now that we could get to. Guys, it was a bit dumb. So I didn't like the main character either, and it was mostly in their point of view. So I decided to DNF that one. Okay, for 1 star, there is one book, and it was a cat story. It's a graphic novel for middle graders, with book that's supposed to be cats in Malta trying to find a home. They don't find a home. And it's very depressing, and it's very demoralizing, and it's very sad. And there's no like, oh, character growth, or we learned a lesson in this respect. Kind of like, what, like, don't bother trying to find a home, just be happy being a street cat. Didn't like the book, didn't like it. And now we're on to the 3 stars area. This had the most amount of books. So we've got Red Queen. Okay, very stock standard YA novel with magic, people with red blood, people who don't have red blood, and that's the better blood. It's not good to have red blood. You are a commoner with no magic. Oh, but then one red blood gets magic and he's going to shake up the whole system. So that was that book. It's fine. It's not. All of the 3-star books, I'm not going to remember these. Like, I'm having difficulty remembering them now, and I read them this month. So that's the problem with 3 stars to me. It's like, yeah, they were fine. It's not memorable. Don't ask me about it, really, to be honest. We've got Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. This was the second in the trilogy. I find with Carissa Broadbent, her first books are knockouts and then they get worse and worse as the series goes along. And that was the case with this one. What was magical in there in the first one wasn't there in the second. Drowned Woods. Okay, was this the one about the chick who has water powers and trying to save a city from being flooded? I think so. I read this recently too, guys. So, yep. I think it was fine. I think this was one based on a Welsh fairy tale. I think it's coming back to me now. It was fun. It was very slow. It was a bit boring, to be honest. Out There, by Kate Folk. Some really weird, messed up body horror short stories. Wasn't to my taste. Donut the Destroyer. Girl's born into an evil family, decides that she wants to be a good guy and goes about trying to do that. Chaos and Flame. I don't even remember this book. I don't remember it at all. I'm sorry. Next. A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon. A bit of fluff with a soft boy cinnamon roll demon and a curvy kitchen witch who kept mucking up her spells. The Past is Red by Valente. So this was a weird ass book. This is bizarre. It's very wordy. The people in this sort of dystopian future, post-apocalyptic climate change disaster world who live on a floating pile of garbage. Like I said, it's not unlike anything I've ever read. I've never read anything like this. It is hard to get through. I just kind of wanted to find out what happened that made everyone hate this woman, because you find out that she's hated and people spit on her and do horrible things to her. And you're like, what did she do? How did she destroy them all? So a lot of things came about. There were twists and stuff. It was okay. It's like, I probably will always remember it because it was so weird. And the writing, the language of the world itself was so bizarre. Her name was Tetley, after tea. Children, for instance, go out and get their names, but they go walking through these garbage piles. Whatever the first person calls them, it tends to be like a piece of garbage has gotten stuck to their body. Whatever the first person calls them, that becomes their name. So her name was Tetley. Then The Neuroscience of Self-Love, a very mediocre, middle-of-the-range book about changing behaviors to increase your mental well-being. The Whispering Muse, a gothic-y, Shakespearean-like period piece where there's lots of murder and magical realism, you know, with people selling their soul to the devil for fame and stardom. Interesting, but wasn't my cup of tea. The Foxglove King. I think this was the one that said there was like necromancy in it, but I didn't love it. They didn't bond to any of the characters. The pacing was slow. Everything happened right at the end of the book with the twists. But it's not enough to keep me going. You know, it wasn't enough. And then Death by Comfort, basically how all the convenience and stuff in our world is slowly killing us and making us very unhealthy and sick. Once again, it was okay, middle of the road. And then we have 3.5 stars. So we have Dreams Lie Beneath. This was an interesting premise where people's nightmares sometimes come to life on, I think it was a full moon or a new moon, I can't remember which one, and you've got the magicians in the town have to fight these nightmares and kill them. So there was magic involved. It was interesting. I liked the main protagonist. There was a love story there, but I wasn't really feeling it, didn't feel true. And things just kind of weren't put together well. Like they had the right pieces, but they just couldn't figure out how to place them. So it, you know, was polished. It was just felt very unpolished and a bit amateurish. But Katie the Cat Sitter, graphic novel, middle grade, about a young girl, a lot of cats, and some good guys and bad guys, so like superheroes and supervillains. But are the villains as villainous as they seem, or are they actually the good guys? So this was fun. There was a lot of boy talk in the beginning and I wasn't sure. My daughter loved this and I'm like, is this why you like this? Are you getting into the boy craze phase at the moment? But no, then it turned out to be more about the cats and doing good things for humanity and a lot about animal welfare. So it was fun. And then we have Tide Song, another middle grade graphic novel about a young girl who's sort of coming of age, falls in love with a Selkie, is trying to figure out how she can integrate all of these new aspects of herself with her old self. Loved it, beautiful style, beautiful color scheme and color story, and it was a good time. Good Night. So this was a book that I read as part of my reading my lowest rated to highest rated. This was my lowest rated on my TBR list. I don't know why, because like, okay, it's not extensive, it's not in depth, but it's just telling you certain things you can do to improve sleep. And it had everything that was holistic, but it also had very practical, more scientific things as well. Like it had everything that you can think of to improve your sleep. Things that I have found in the past with books, they only touch upon maybe half of those things, whereas this has just collated everything from scientific books to holistic to alternative medicine books and put them all together. So I think it's a great just first practical step to try and improve your sleep. Like, hey, change your bedding, change your sheets, don't eat late at night, sleep in darkness, use some essential oils, get some therapy in case you've got certain fears and traumas that are, you know, stopping you from sleeping. Like, it was a good all-rounder, so I thought it was decent and deserved the very low rating it had. And then we have Six Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent. This is like a mini novella that goes in between her other series, and it was fine. It was nice, it was cute. Woman is a scientist trying to figure out how to stop the plague, needs some vampire blood to test on, and finds a willing vampire participant, and love ensues. So I didn't mind it. I actually freaking love novellas, to be honest with you. Sometimes I just want to get in and out and get a book and story done in a day and have that buzz and that dopamine hit without dragging it on for so long. So I really loved it. 3.5 stars. Like, didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. And then we have 4.5 stars, and both books in this were from the same series, and it's the Lightfall books. These are middle grade graphic novels. These have such a cozy autumnal vibe. The illustrations are beautiful. The color story is rich, earthy hues. It's about a young girl who's an orphan, and she pairs up with a Galdurian who's the last of his kind, and their cat sidekick to save the world from what they believe is an evil entity who is stealing all the suns and taking the light and allowing shadow monsters to overwhelm the planet. So I love them. I really do. It's fun. It's a fun fantasy adventure, and I want to know what's going to happen and how's it going to end. And there's dragons, and there's all these beautiful mythical creatures in there, and quirky characters, and they're learning a lot on the way on how to overcome their fears. The main girl seems to have anxiety and gets panic attacks. So I really enjoyed them. I think they're fantastic and probably underrated. So if you have, middle grade kids, this is a great series. And then we have 4.75 stars. So this close to a 5-star, but wasn't quite there. And this is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. This was so good. He said he got a lot of inspiration from Princess Bride, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I definitely feel the elements of that in there, but it's a young girl and a boy who just, a set of matching gloves, and her quest to go and retrieve him when he's been taken by an evil sorceress, and for her to step out of her comfort zone and do things that frighten her. There's found family, there's lots of adventures. It's a very Pirates of the Sea kind of book as well, and true love, but also finding yourself and becoming your own person, and really stepping into your own power. So I loved it. The world was interesting too, with these spores that are in the sea instead of water, and they all have different properties, but they're not as what they seem. Maybe they've got alternate uses and people have to look at them in a different way. So there's a scientific element too, but it's just a really fun adventure book. Once again, that I would recommend to middle graders as well. I thought it was a fantastic book, but I love these books too. You can be adults and you can read picture books and middle grade books and all these things. Please don't let age ranges or whatever the category is stop you from getting to experience a wonderful story. Stories at the end of the day are made for everyone. So I loved it. 4.75. I actually bought the hardcover copy of this so that my kids can read it next, because I think it's a fantastic book. So those were all of the books that I read in May. Once again, like I said, it was a pretty decent month. There were a lot of DNFs, but I think because of that, my average rating was higher, because I DNF'd these books that I knew would be 3 stars or less. So I didn't really have a lot of I had one 1-star book, and I had 0 2-star books, and the next level up was 3s. So I think that definitely is a strategy moving forward. If a book's just not for me, DNF it, and it's okay. Let's save that time to give to books that really fill me with happiness and joy, or emotions, or change my thought patterns. Like, I want change, I want books that make me feel good things, not hatred. So I also want to thank Rochelle from Amethyst Ascension for this beautiful necklace that you see draping my décolletage. This was a gift from her. It's called The Seductress, and I'm in love. Her and me, we're going to be besties. So I just wanted to give a shout out to her. So thank you very much, my love. I hope that all of you are having an absolutely gorgeous morning, afternoon, or evening. I will catch you on my next reading vlog, but also let's hope that June, things just keep going up from here, let's just keep on this incline, because I'm loving it. And I'll see you next time. And as always, stay wild, star child.